Hello. It started in upstate New York, in the kind of small town where nothing really happens until it does. And when it does, it spreads like wildfire through the gossip chain that runs faster than the local paper ever could. You know the kind. Clapboard houses with wraparound porches, American flags on every third mailbox, church bells ringing every Sunday like clockwork. The kind of town where people wave at you whether they know you or not, and the most scandalous thing up until now was Old Man Carver accidentally flashing the cashier at the Piggly Wiggly because he forgot to zip up. That's the place I built my life. 15 years married to Carla, a woman I thought I knew better than I knew myself. We didn't have flash or flare, but we had routine, and we had roots. I worked maintenance at the school, fixing boilers, unsticking lockers, and patching up tiles that the kids always managed to scuff up with their skate shoes. Carla, she manned the front desk at Dr. Langford's dental office. She was the first face folks saw when they walked in with their toothaches and insurance questions. She had that type of smile that people trusted. That was the life. Steady, predictable, quiet. But quiet doesn't mean peaceful, and predictable doesn't mean safe. Looking back, I don't know when it really started unraveling, only that it did. Slow at first, like a crack on a windshield that you think you can ignore until the whole thing just shatters in one clean break. It began with small things. She started coming home later than usual, blaming it on end-of-day paperwork, insurance problems, a new training module at the office, always just believable enough not to cause alarm. But it didn't feel right. There was this weird tension in the air every time she walked through the door. Not the kind that comes from a hard day, but the kind that says, "Don't ask me anything." She stopped texting me back quickly, too. Started carrying her phone into the bathroom, setting it face down during dinner, which she never used to do. And she smelled different. Not bad, just not like her. A new perfume, she claimed. A free sample from the office. But it wasn't a scent she ever wore before, and it clung to her like a secret. I told myself it was nothing. Just age, just stress, just life. Hell, I even convinced myself maybe it was menopause. She was 43 after all. Maybe the mood swings, the distance, the flashes of irritation at nothing. Maybe all of that was just her body changing, not our marriage. I blamed hormones before I blamed her. And that was my first mistake. One night, a Wednesday, I remember, because I always play cards with the guys on Tuesdays, I came home early from a boiler repair job at the elementary school. The thing had been a mess, but the new part worked like a charm, so I clocked out early and figured I'd surprise her. Maybe take her out to the diner like we used to. Maybe just sit on the porch and listen to the crickets like we hadn't done in months. I pulled into the driveway, my boots still wet from the slush, and I heard her voice before I saw her. She was out on the porch, hunched into her coat, her phone cupped between her shoulder and her ear like a teenager trying to whisper without getting caught. I stood by the truck for a second, just watching her from the shadows, the porch light casting this glow on her that made her look younger somehow, more alive than she'd seemed in weeks. And then I heard it. A giggle. A goddamn giggle. The kind of laugh you give someone when they make you blush, when they've said something bold, something meant only for you. It was light and soft and so far from the Carla I'd been living with that I felt like I was spying on a stranger. I stepped up onto the porch, boots thudding against the wood, and she jumped. Not out of guilt, not out of shame, but out of pure, unfiltered annoyance. She looked at me like I was the interruption, like I was the one sneaking around. Her face pinched, her lips twisted into that tired, tight-lipped expression I'd started to see more and more, and she said, "Do you need something?" Not even a, "Hey, you're home early," or "What's wrong?" Just that cold question, like I was a nosy neighbor instead of the man who'd fixed her dad's roof when he threw his back out. The man who painted our living room the exact shade of coastal blue she picked after seeing it in a Pottery Barn catalog. I didn't say a word, just shook my head and went inside. And you know what she did? She stayed out there for another 20 minutes. I timed it, I stood by the window, heart thumping so loud it felt like a warning siren, and I watched her smile at her phone, nod like she was listening to someone she wanted to hear from, and then tuck it back into her coat before finally coming in and saying, "You're quiet," as if she didn't know damn well what was going on. I didn't confront her that night. God help me, I should have. I know that now, and I think a part of me even knew it then. Standing in the kitchen like a damn ghost in my own house, watching her move through the space we'd built together with all the ease and indifference of someone who wasn't worried about being caught. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't force the truth out of her, because part of me still wasn't ready to hear it. So I lied to myself instead. I convinced myself it was a misunderstanding, that she'd explain it away in the morning, that maybe the giggling on the porch was a call with a friend, maybe something innocent. Maybe I was the one being paranoid. Maybe I was the problem. That's the game you play with yourself when the truth is too ugly to face head-on. You invent kinder lies and wrap yourself in them like a blanket that doesn't cover your feet. You say you're waiting for the right moment, but really, you're just afraid of what happens when you stop pretending. The next morning, she was all sunshine and normalcy, like the night before had been some bad dream I'd imagined. She was up early, humming as she shuffled around the kitchen in that worn old robe with the coffee stain on the sleeve, frying eggs and toasting bread like it was 2009, and we were still newlyweds who couldn't go a day without calling each other just to say, "I love you." And it made my skin crawl. That normalcy, that hollow, performative calm, was worse than any screaming match we could have had. I sat at the table, my eyes locked on her every move, the fork in my hand trembling because I couldn't tell if I was watching my wife or a woman playing house with a man she didn't love anymore. She slid a plate in front of me and said, "Eat while it's hot." I stared down at the food like it was a prop in some twisted little play. Eggs cooked exactly how I liked them. Toast buttered all the way to the edges. But it tasted like cardboard because the woman who made it had been whispering to another man on our porch not even 10 hours earlier. I kept it together. Barely. I nodded, mumbled a thank you, and forced a bite down while my stomach twisted like barbed wire. She kissed me on the cheek before heading out. Said she had a long day ahead at the office, back-to-back appointments. I said nothing. Just watched her walk out the door like she hadn't just desecrated the foundation we'd spent a decade and a half laying down together. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room in the dark with only the blue light of the TV flickering across the walls, and I did something I'd never done before. I opened up the online phone bill. Carla always handled the bills. She said it was easier that way. She liked things neat and organized, and I never questioned it. But that night, I did. I logged into the account we shared and I started scrolling. My hands shook the whole time, and I could barely breathe when I saw it. Dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize. Not spam, not work-related, not a friend. Just one number, over and over again, at all hours of the day. Calls that lasted late into the night, even some during work hours when she was supposedly sitting behind the desk at Dr. Langford's office. My heart slammed against my ribs as I copied the number and called it from my phone, hands slick with sweat. A man answered. Calm, casual, like this was nothing new. "You must be the husband," he said. Just like that. No stammer, no confusion, no apology, just cool acknowledgement. Like I was the guest star in a story that had already been going on without me. I hung up without a word, my hands numb, my chest hollowed out like something had reached inside and scooped me clean. That was the moment it became real. Not a suspicion, not a nightmare, not some wild idea born from insecurity, but truth. Concrete and sickening. I didn't tell Carla I knew. I wish I could say I had some grand plan or that I was playing it smart, but the truth is I just froze. I went numb. I didn't want to scream or cry. I wanted to watch. I wanted to see what else she thought she could hide from me. Because if she was bold enough to talk to him while I was home, then she was arrogant enough to leave more behind. And I was right. The first thing I checked was our credit card. Not mine. Ours. The one we used for groceries, for gas, for birthdays and anniversaries and everything in between. And there it was. Charges in Albany. Hotel stays. Room service. Spa treatments. all dated to weekends she'd said she was attending training seminars or visiting her aunt. Albany, the city she hadn't set foot in, as far as I knew, since her cousin's wedding 5 years ago. I opened her email next, and my stomach dropped when I found the confirmations. Hotel reservations under her name. Charges for champagne and chocolates. And then, like a punch to the face, photos. Tucked away in a folder labeled tax docs, of all things. Selfies. Her and him. In our backyard. On our deck. In our bed. Her hair down, his hand on her waist, their faces so close it made me physically recoil. She was dragging this man, this stranger, into my life, into the spaces I built, into the memories I helped create, like she was laying claim to them all over again, but this time with him by her side. Like she was rewriting our history, photo by photo, moment by moment, until there was no trace of me left. And I knew then, I wasn't dealing with some momentary lapse in judgment. I was watching a woman replace me, deliberately, strategically, cruelly. That was when something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not violently, not like glass shattering or wood splitting down the middle. It was quiet, subtle, like a screw coming loose inside a machine, just enough to start a cascade of slow, inevitable failure. I sat there, hours into the night, watching her sleep peacefully in our bed while I stared at pictures of her kissing another man in that very same spot. And I knew I couldn't stay silent much longer. I couldn't keep eating her eggs and kissing her cheek and pretending not to know. She thought she had me fooled. She thought I'd never do anything. But she was wrong. I started documenting everything. I downloaded every statement, screenshot every charge, every message. I backed it up to a USB drive I kept hidden under the floorboards in the garage. I took pictures of the emails, the photos, the hotel bills. I printed some out and kept them in a folder labeled Home Repairs. Because if she wanted to burn our marriage down to ashes, then I was going to make damn sure she didn't get to walk away from the fire without some scorch marks of her own. The worst part wasn't the cheating, if you can believe that. It wasn't the hotel rooms or the hidden photos, or even the late-night calls I heard her whisper through while pretending to be exhausted from work. No, the worst part. The thing that kept me up long after the house had gone quiet and my phone had stopped buzzing with more proof of her lies was how easily she let go of our life. How quickly she rewrote 15 years of marriage like it was a first draft that never deserved to be published. How she looked me in the eye in the living room where we had unwrapped Christmas gifts with our son just 2 months earlier and acted like I was some footnote in a chapter she never cared to reread. I confronted her that Sunday. I'd spent the whole weekend putting it together. The hotel charges, the photos, the emails, all of it printed, cataloged, ordered. Not because I wanted revenge yet, but because I needed clarity. I needed to face her with the truth laid bare because I thought, deep down, that maybe if she saw how much I knew, maybe if she saw how broken it had left me, something in her would snap back to the woman I married. The one who cried when our dog died, who danced barefoot in the kitchen, who clung to me during tornado warnings and told me I was her whole world. But that woman was long gone, and I only realized it when I sat her down on our tan microfiber couch and put the folder on the coffee table between us. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't even look surprised. That folder could have had her death certificate inside it, and she would have sighed the same way. She leaned back, crossed her legs like we were at a dentist appointment, and waited for me to speak. Bored, detached, unbothered. I told her I knew. I laid it all out. Greg, the phone calls, the hotel rooms in Albany, the emails where she said things like, I should have married you instead, and Jim doesn't see me anymore. And you know what she said? What this woman, this wife, said to me after I poured out the full extent of her betrayal? People change, Jim. That's it. No tears, no denial, no shame. Just those 2 words, like it was some universal truth that made everything okay. Like her decision to dismantle our life, brick by brick, was just part of some natural evolution, like a tree losing its leaves in fall. People change. And just like that, everything we had built, the mortgage payments, the car loans, the family dinners, the vacations to Cape Cod, The miscarriages we grieved together, the Christmas mornings and anniversary dinners, all of it was just something we outgrew, like an old shirt with holes in the collar. Nothing more. I asked her who he was. I needed to hear it from her lips, to watch her face contort when she had to say his name. Greg. And she said it so casually, so matter-of-factly, I could barely breathe. Greg, she said. Greg from high school. He listens to me. He makes me laugh. Like I'd never done any of that? Like the 15 years I spent trying to keep her happy, paying off her student loans, carrying her dad up the stairs when his legs gave out, building her a goddamn flower bed with my bare hands. Meant less than a few dinners and flirty text messages from some washed-up ex-boyfriend who'd come crawling back to town after burning through 2 failed marriages of his own. I was the one who stayed, who showed up, who didn't quit when things got hard. But to her, Greg was the reward, and I was just the guy who kept the lights on while she waited. I told her I knew about the hotels, about Albany, about the selfies in our bed. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She looked at me with those flat, glassy eyes and said, I want a trial separation. For clarity. Clarity, that's what she called it. Like this was some kind of boardroom split. Like we were business partners dividing assets and not a man and woman tearing their vows apart like they were printed on tissue paper. I think I laughed then. Not because it was funny, there was nothing funny about it, but because it was the only sound I could make that didn't come out as a scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg her to stay. I just stood up, walked into the bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. A few shirts, a couple pairs of jeans, my shaving kit, and my wallet. That's it. 15 years together and I left with less than I bring on a fishing trip. I moved into my brother Ron's guest room that night. His house smelled like dog hair and microwave dinners, and the mattress was so lumpy I had to sleep diagonally to avoid the springs. But at least it was mine. At least there were no ghosts in that bed. No memories folded into the sheets. Ron offered me a beer, said, Jesus, man, I'm sorry. And I nodded, because there was nothing else to say. We sat in silence watching a baseball game neither of us cared about, the sound of the announcer blurring into white noise while I stared at the dark reflection of myself in the TV screen and tried to figure out when everything had gone to hell. I lay there that night staring at the ceiling, not sleeping, not thinking, just hurting. The kind of hurt that doesn't come with words. The kind that settles into your bones and makes you feel like your blood's turned to syrup. I'd built a life with a woman who could look me in the face and tell me she needed clarity while another man texted her goodnight. And I'd let her. I let her lie. I let her cheat. I let her smile at me like I was stupid, and I smiled back because I didn't want to believe what was right in front of me. But not anymore. She wanted a trial separation. She got it. But she had no idea what that meant for me, because I wasn't going to just walk away. I wasn't going to vanish quietly and let her write the story without me. She wanted to erase me? Fine. But I was going to leave behind ink that wouldn't wash off. She had made her choice. Now I was going to make mine. Living away from the house I built with my own 2 hands, brick by brick, hour by hour, year after year, felt like death. Not the kind of death that comes quick like a gunshot or a car crash, but the slow, creeping kind that rots you from the inside out, that lets you breathe just enough to feel it, that wraps itself around your spine and squeezes a little more every time you remember what used to be. Every creak of Ron's floorboards, every time I reached for a light switch in the wrong spot or opened a drawer expecting silverware but finding nothing but junk mail and batteries, reminded me I wasn't home anymore. And worse, that someone else was. That she was still there, in my house, living out my life, like I was the one who didn't belong. But even then, even in that haze of heartbreak and displacement, I couldn't shake the need to know. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to witness what I had only pieced together through receipts and emails. So I made a plan. Quiet. Careful. I waited for a Wednesday because that's the day she always said she worked late, when she'd text me, crazy day at the office, and then go dark for hours. I left work early, told Ron not to expect me till late, and parked a few blocks down from our house. Not her house. Our house. That distinction mattered. Still does. It was still light out when I saw it. A black SUV pulling up into our driveway like it belonged there. The engine humming like it had always been part of the landscape. And then there she was. Carla, my wife, in a sundress she hadn't worn in years. Not since our last real vacation. The one where she kissed me on the beach and said, "I feel like myself again." I remember that trip. She wore that dress when we danced under string lights and laughed so hard she cried. And now she was wearing it for him. She came out the front door like she was in a movie, graceful and glowing, with a smile I hadn't seen in months. Not for me, at least. No, this smile was for the man who stepped out of that SUV. Tall, smug, his shirt unbuttoned one extra snap just to show off a little chest hair like some damn cologne ad from the 90s. Greg. I knew it was him. The way he looked at her, that familiar, territorial possessiveness, it was the look of a man who'd already claimed something. And she kissed him. Right there, in our driveway. Like the past 15 years meant nothing. Like I had never existed. There was no hesitation, no checking over her shoulder, no guilt. Just lips, meeting lips in broad daylight, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And my hands clenched so hard on the steering wheel I thought the leather would tear. But I didn't get out. I didn't scream. I didn't storm over and demand answers. I watched. I watched her slide into the passenger seat and laugh as they pulled out, heading off to whatever fantasy world she thought she belonged in now. And I followed them. They didn't go far. Just to a restaurant across town, one of those white tablecloth places with candles on the table and a wine list that reads like a goddamn novel. The kind of place we couldn't afford when we were starting out. The kind of place I used to say I'd take her to someday, when we had the money, when the mortgage was caught up, when we weren't living paycheck to paycheck. She's sitting there now with him, sipping red wine like she's finally made it, like this is who she was always supposed to be. The elegant woman with her hand on her lover's arm, laughing like a schoolgirl, head tilted back, lips painted for someone else. I watched them from across the street, parked behind a delivery truck, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon in steel boots. And then, like a slap in the face, my phone buzzed. Not a call, a notification, Instagram, a picture she'd just posted. Just a wine glass, tilted in front of a plate of pasta. But the caption said it all. Finally free. 2 little words. Just like the ones she'd used to kill our marriage. People change. Finally free. The language of someone unburdened. Someone not grieving what they lost, but celebrating what they left behind. And that was the moment something inside me calcified. The hurt didn't go away, but it changed. Hardened. Shifted into something more useful, more focused. Because it wasn't just about betrayal anymore, it was about erasure. She wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just lying. She was replacing. She was rewriting our story, turning it into a cautionary tale where she was the heroine who escaped a boring life, and I was just the faceless man she had to leave behind to find herself. And I'll be damned if I was going to let her do that. I started documenting everything. Every hotel receipt, every dinner charge, every late-night call, and every picture she posted with captions that screamed, "Look at me, I'm winning." I took screenshots. I printed things out. I made copies. I built a timeline. Every detail she thought I'd miss. Every move she made like I was too broken or too soft to notice. I caught it all. I created a file. Not on my computer, but a real, physical binder, like a case file in a police investigation. Dates, times, locations, photos, texts, names. Because she wanted a war she didn't think I'd fight. But I wasn't done yet. She thought she'd left behind a quiet man. A man who'd cry into his beer and eventually move on. She had no idea what kind of man I really was. The kind who pays attention, the kind who doesn't forget, the kind who rebuilds. Not because he wants her back, but because he's going to make sure she regrets ever letting him go. Bye-bye.